His power talk is how to fail at flipping, the mistakes to avoid when first starting out. When Kuba did his first flip a few years ago, it was an unmitigated disaster. He didn't know how to value a property. That's important. Or know anything about how to estimate rehab costs, and the project took twice as long and cost twice as much. Has anybody here ever been in that position? See, now him and I took twice. I remember my first one 4 times, maybe. Cost 4 times more. This presentation will be an introspective look back at that flip, outlining some of the mistakes that were made, and a discussion of the lessons learned. Kuba is the founder of REIKit.com, a real estate investment software that makes investors make more profitable deals by giving them the tools to perform thorough due diligence and to market their deals to lenders and other investors. The tools have already been used to perform due diligence on thousands of deals by wholesalers, flippers, realtors, acquisition managers, and multifamily syndicators across the country. Kuba traded in a successful career as a technology executive to follow his passion for entrepreneurship and solving real estate problems with technology. He's also a realtor, happy to help other investors with their transactions in the Los Angeles area. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Kuba.
Thanks, Bill, for that wonderful introduction. I can skip a slide now. All right, haven't used this before. So I want to welcome everybody. I mean, this is going to be a great summit, I think. Third one is going to be the best one, right? So I want to go down memory lane, kind of start off with a little bit of fun. It wasn't fun back then, of course. So Bill already introduced me, so we don't need to get into it. So why am I here? So I built REIKit for a reason, and that's to help me avoid those mistakes in that first flip, where I lost thousands of dollars in 8 months, very stressful months of my life. And when I did a post-mortem on that flip, I came to several realizations. I didn't know how to value a property, so I let other people influence what that value should be. I also didn't know the costs or effort associated with a renovation project, which then spiraled out of control. Now, of course, I made 100 other mistakes, like stupid ones, like forgetting the cost of money, and 100 other ones. We'll talk about some of them. But if I were to sum it all up, I think what really sunk this deal was that I delegated too much responsibility to other people with financial interests that were not aligned with mine. So let's go over some of these lessons learned. So, as I said already, it was an unmitigated disaster. But really, how could that be? I have a math degree from a top school. I should be able to analyze properties without any problems whatsoever. I have a graduate degree in information systems. I should be able to apply systems thinking to any problems that come up. I'm certified in not just one, but multiple project management disciplines. I've ran teams of 50. Surely I can run something as simple as a flip, right? Until you get into the details. So let's do that. Project, you can see it was a really old house, hot neighborhood in St. Louis. It was a gut rehab with a value add, 300 square foot bedroom addition in the back. Going to make the bathroom bigger, move some walls. I put a laundry in the bathroom. As advertised, like usually happens, this deal is pretty sweet. 31 purchase, 42 rehab, 3-month holding, 125 sale for a nice, healthy profit. Of course, reality is usually less rosy. Costs are higher, sales price lower. sad face. So where did we go wrong? Well, the first thing is that we let other people have undue influence on the property value. Our friend Chuck Norris might say that most people trying to sell us real estate have a direct conflict of interest with us when it comes to the value of that property. Whether that's the seller, the wholesaler trying to market to you, even your own realtor. That's why it's incumbent upon you to come up with that value yourself. Now, I tried to do that, but it was really basic. I didn't have the knowledge, experience, or tools necessary to be able to push back on those numbers presented. So what are those numbers? These are the comps that were presented. They're actually not bad, providing for an average ARV of 121,000 and change, with a suggested retail of 125. Theory is that we were providing an entry-level product where most rehabs were at a much higher price point, about 200,000. So we have a product in demand. To this partner's credit, our realtor agreed with that assessment. So just because you have a realtor, it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of coming up with those numbers yourself. Now, realtors do have a duty to their clients, but it's the incentive structure that's broken. Realtors are paid to close deals, to make transactions extremely smooth. What you really need is somebody to throw up roadblocks. And only if those roadblocks are satisfied should you proceed with a deal. That's why it's really important to have a realtor with a long-term view of your relationship. Okay, let's go back to the numbers. So these comps look pretty good. You can't see it on the screen, but they're within 3 to 6 months. The age is good. They look pretty close to each other. They look fine. So you dig a little bit deeper. Let's do that. Let's go back to basics, do a little audience participation. Who can tell me what makes a good comp?
Sales in the area?
Okay. Property? Like properties. Similar, yeah. Architecture. Anyone else?
Square footage,
Yeah. Okay.
room count,
Room count, square footage, yeah. Similar properties. What's that? Amenities. Beautiful.
rehabs, already rehab.
Already rehab, yeah. Similar finishing. So most of you know what's happening, right? A lot of knowledgeable people here. Let's talk about distance for a minute. Anyone know what the best distance is to go from a comp?
Quarter mile. Next door.
Next door. Half a mile? So pretty close, right? It's a track. So I'm on my soapbox almost daily talking about how I think distance is a really poor proxy for a much better location indicator to filter your comps. Anyone know what that might be?
Read it again?
What might be a better indicator of location filter than distance?
Similar type of neighborhood.
Bingo. If I had a t-shirt gun, I'd shoot it at you. So, let's talk about that. What delineates neighborhood boundaries? Where school, zip code, track, boulevard, beautiful. Heard most of these. All right, so let's go back to our property. Our neighborhood, Tower Grove East, delineated by the red outline. Arterial Road on the south and west side, Park on the west side, other neighborhoods on the other side. What can we see immediately here? One of the properties, the one on California Avenue, is in a different neighborhood. In a place like St. Louis, that matters. So we should probably remove it. Another reason to remove it is that it's too big. We talked about size. So realtors use about 10%, a 10% rule. Properties should be within 10% of each other. You can probably go up as high as 20%. That's what I did here. But this property is about 30% larger than our subject. So we're going to remove it. Now our area has gone up. Does anyone know why? So there's an inverse relationship between the size of a property and the dollars per square foot that it's going to fetch. If we went far enough off the graph, we might be able to say that any additional square footage at some point doesn't add any additional value. So where we remove the largest property, we remove the lowest dollars per square foot, therefore increasing the average for the remaining ones. Okay, let's do some more. The highlighted properties, you probably can't see in the pictures, but they're actually units within larger multifamily buildings. Our property is a single-family residence, so we can just remove these. Now our area is going down. So we have like properties in the same neighborhood, about the same size. We're done, right?
No.
Right. You gotta adjust for features and amenities. So let's do that quick. Two of these properties have half bathrooms, valued at about $5,000 for that size range of house. So we have a little bit of adjustment there. But it's garage spaces that I think really push the value of this property down the most. So the last 2 days, we had some rain. And this is probably the worst 2 days of the year, right? We forget about places like St. Louis where there's weather events, where a garage is actually pretty useful. Most of these properties had garages, so we see these huge $15,000 value adjustments really pushing the value of our property down. Lot size, normally lots are pretty much the same size, so it doesn't really make sense to adjust for those, except for one of these properties had a double lot. Improvement was actually pretty easy to come up with. The last two properties on the screen are actually identical. They're on the same street, same architecture, everything's the same, except one has a larger lot and the other one is improved. By extracting the things we know, came up with an improvement value of $20 a square foot. Perhaps that should have been another hint that maybe improvements weren't the right way to go in that neighborhood at that time.
When you say improvements, are you meaning additions?
No, I'm talking rehab. One of the properties had a finished basement, so that's valued at whatever improvement value, $20. And then those two properties on the right were on a busy street. After all that, our property has gone down from $110 a square foot to $101, value down by $10,000. So let's go on a little side note here. Doing that little analysis probably would have taken 15-30 minutes if we knew what we're doing. It probably would have killed this deal, or at least put a really big dent into should we really do it. So I think it's so fundamental that probably one of the most important and easy things you can do to just ensure that you're going to be profitable. Okay. So this is something that I truly had no idea about what I was doing. So rather than learning about the subject, I delegated that responsibility to my partner. I know what you're thinking, and you'd be right. This is the SOW that he came up with. And other than there being 1,000 things wrong with it, it's complete fiction. like this line item, all of the framing for building that 300 square foot addition for the low, low price of $5,000. You can't paint for $5,000. If we were to itemize all of the costs involved in just the rough carpentry of that project, it would be at least $14,000, probably way more. And doing that itemization probably would have prevented emails like this one. Over budget, 24, more time, or we can sell it for more. Other problem with this. There was a tree where we needed to put the addition. We talked about the tree removal, was not on the bid. New Electric, this was something that was a risk that we didn't remove. New Electric service, when itemized, for all the wiring in the new service, would have been about $7,000, not $2,000. Where are the appliances? New water service, another risk we didn't remove. So what's the lesson here? Exact same thing as to what happened with the comps. Not enough knowledge, too much delegation of responsibility. So you really know the end of the story, right? Spiral out of control. So before the next one was really time to think about what we're, lick our wounds and think about what we're supposed to do to fix that. And of course, started with education. Read everything we could get our hands on. Basic real estate education. That tool for the adjustment is roughly based on the Uniform Appraisal Report. This is my favorite book of all time. If you're intimidated by the renovation process, if you have no idea how to estimate rehab costs, this will give you what I call estimating legs. These books, read cover to cover, it's like reading a phone book. They're cost books. But reading about every single cost for every imaginable improvement project kind of demystifies the process. And then, we figure out what our lessons were. Started doing our comps, built the tool, you run our comps. One of the biggest problems was our middleman. Because of that, we couldn't manage risk, communication, cost, scope, all of the project management fundamentals. Get rid of the middleman. And done that, come up with our own scope of work. Do some education. And the way I do it now is I walk around the property with my camera phone, going roughly by a checklist, top to bottom. Then I can take that home and watch it over and over again and estimate. With that estimate, we can get multiple bids, something we couldn't do. My partner didn't do it. And knowing those costs allows me to really negotiate. Who's paying too much for the contractor right now? We put provisions in our contracts. Contractor responsible for cost of rework or failed inspection. That happened. They built the foundation pilings not to code. Maybe we've had a reduction in payment due to delays. Maybe it wouldn't have taken twice as long. These are risks that we knew were risks, but we didn't remove them ahead of time. A simple phone call to the city would have done that. Water and electric both caught us. Sewer probably would have, but we had to replace it for other reasons anyways. These are really interesting administrative lessons. You should get your W-9s before work begins. If you don't know what W-9s are, they're ways for you to collect tax information so that you can file 1099s to say how much you pay your contractors. If you don't know what that is, probably should reach out to Rubber Hall. They'll take care of that. But if you don't have that information when you're filing at the end of the year, when the project is long gone, long over, they have long gone and your relationship is soured, the last thing they want to do is tell you their tax information so you can rat them out to the IRS. Same thing with lien waivers. If you don't get that as a precondition of last payment, the last thing they want to do is sign something, do paperwork that they don't really care about once they're long gone. And then something that we definitely should have done is researched our partner. Have we looked into any possible lawsuits? And we would have seen similar behavior going on. So shit happens. But I think it's what you do with that that will determine your next steps, your next success. So thank you very much. I live on my email. Please, if you have any questions or want to talk about anything, reach out to me.
How do you help a person who's starting to invest in houses?
The question is, how do you help a person who's starting to invest in houses? Well, you have to start with education. So, do you know enough to invest your money? The one thing that did go well is that I only invested money that I was prepared to lose. I lost it, but I learned something. Mentors, certainly.
Were you and your partner managing this entirely remotely, or who else?
I didn't step foot on it.
Come on, any question?
Oh, did we manage it entirely remotely? So I didn't see it. It was based on trust.
So how do your software works? Does it work just for California or is it nationwide?
It's nationwide. So how does the software work? Does it work just in California? It's nationwide.
So it's like a spreadsheet or Scalpel into it, Scalpel online?
Come by the booth later on. I can give you a demo. I don't want to get into.
Last question.
Last question?
When you report your comps, did you actually go to the property to view it, or did you just go based off the information online?
When I did my comps, did I go to the property and view it, or just do the information online? So I didn't step foot on the property. I did have a realtor on site to help with that process.
You're going to answer additional questions if you have.
What's that? Right. So please come by the booth if you have any additional questions. On here all day. Thank you.